if you know what the letter S stands in RSA, you might want to skip it. The Vault presumes that you know nothing about the Vault, and you do have some experience with Windows. Kind of what makes me qualified for this talk is, I've been MSCE from the past millennia. I'm Microsoft Certified Engineer from NT 4.0 days. I passed CISSP exam, which is one of the most toughest exam in the security back in 2005, and I am Vault certified. For the past 7 years, I've been a faculty at the Columbia Technology Management Program, so I'll try to make this talk a little bit more engaging than the corporate accounting class. And I run an global infrastructure for a hedge fund. I don't believe we're involved with GME, but in any case, I'm not, I cannot comment on the firm's position or speak on the firm's behalf, so all opinions are my own. I assume no liability. Please use my advice. Do your homework. So before we go, I want to show you what the Vault looks like, and then we're going to talk about what it does and why you might want to deploy it and how it fits into the modern infrastructure. And then we'll talk about how to apply it to manage security for on-prem Windows AD environments. So if you're looking at this as a recording, you might want to skip 5 to 7 minutes. Let me share the screen instead of the presentation. And let's go into one of the dev machines that I have. Vault can be downloaded directly from HashiCorp.io. Just Google for it. It's a single monolithic executable, which is a great change in the current state of, when you have of containers. You don't need to worry about the JRE version. You don't need to worry about .NET framework. You don't need to worry about even the Golang version that you have installed. The user that I'm logged on the machine is neither domain admin nor machine admin. It's a simple user account that anybody in your firm, in the development team, or even just the user pool has. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to launch this executable as a server. I'm going to use it as a development server. And we'll see how it goes. Boom. We have Vault running locally on the machine. By the way, if you were looking for a sign that your development and production environments should be separated, consider this to be it. I mean, essentially, when you launch Vault in the development mode, it will not commit any data to storage. So the moment you close it, all your secrets and all your configurations are going to be gone forever. The next thing I'm going to do, and I'm going to say something that never been done or said in the history of the HashiCorp talks. Let's launch Microsoft Edge. And because this is the Windows talk, I'm going to use GUI for as much as I can. But going back to the Vault and going back to the command prompt, I used the switch to launch the Vault using and set the dev and set the root token to be just plain root. So this is the login that I'm going to use to log in into the interface. Now, pretty much just by looking at the user interface of the root of the Vault, you can conclude what it does. I mean, essentially, it provides the programmatical policy-based access to authenticated objects to secrets stored inside the Vault. Let me show you how easy it is to integrate to Active Directory as as authentication provider. So all I need to do is, just a couple of clicks and we're going to be it. So from the Access tab, I'm selecting LDAP. And as you should know, the Windows Domain Controller is LDAP compliant. And I'm going to enable this method. And then we need to provide the configuration for it. The configuration is pretty simple and straightforward. All I need to do is provide the domain, the Windows AD domain name. And through the magic of AD, it will locate closest domain controller for us. I'm not going to select any of the LDAP options except for the user attribute. Because of the way Active Directory schema is working, I need to use SAM account name to get the user attribute. This will allow me to use the username or account name to use the account name that everybody's used to, as opposed to the display name, which is stored in the CN attribute in Active Directory. And now all I need to do is to provide a user that will be used to access the LDAP. And this user does not have to be a domain admin or any kind of admin. As a matter of fact, if you have a really old Active Directory, you might just be able to get by with anonymous user. So once I click Save, LDAP is configured, and we will be able to launch another Microsoft Edge session, and from there, we will be able to log in with AD credentials. So this took care of the first part of the equation. So now we can see, now we can use Active Directory to authenticate to Vault. I would like to take a step back and talk about the philosophy behind Vault and like why you want to use it. And then we'll go back and see how we can use Vault to manage secrets or store secrets or accounts in Active Directory. So firstly, let's talk about the role of the infrastructure teams in the age of the public cloud. Essentially, we no longer have to rack and wire servers. We no longer have to configure servers in the public cloud. For the large part, we don't need to update them as much, but we're still responsible for the operations. We're still responsible for the uptime. So of course, this is where the multi-cloud comes in, because the fact that Azure is down or AWS is down or Google Cloud is down is not a good excuse to have the enterprise down. But this talk is not about the operational excellence. There's a great talk by the CEO of HashiCorp that you can watch, and there's a link for it provided. Another role that still stays in the infrastructure is the financial controls. Yes, with the cloud, we moved to a large extent from the CapEx to the OpEx, but it's still our responsibility to make sure that the firm's funds are deployed efficiently. And the security. And this is where the HashiCorp Vault comes in, because the security in the cloud is very different from what you have on-prem. And the Active Directory is a great tool, but it has been developed 20 years ago and does not correspond to the modern needs. And what are the modern needs? The modern needs is to provide security for the cloud. And security in the cloud cannot rely on the perimeter security anymore, because the perimeter is no longer there. The legitimate request can come from anywhere. So you need to rely on identity being your new perimeter. On-prem, security relied on trust, and AD domains and forests are a great example where a user in one domain could consume resources in another domain simply because there was a two-way trust established between those two domains. In the cloud, you had to verify every request. On-prem, you could rely on the access control lists to maintain security on the resources. In the cloud, sometimes the lifespan of the resource or the requester is shorter than it would take time to create ACL. So you need to have a policy-based security. On-prem security to a large extent is human-oriented in a sense that we're trying to secure assets against humans or provide access to humans, versus cloud era where it's object-oriented security, where essentially think about the IoT scenario where it's devices talking to each other, machines talking to storage devices, et cetera, et cetera. And then because of everything that I've said before, current on-prem solutions are low scale. Yes, Active Directory can contain over 1 billion records, but think about the overhead that you will need to manage them efficiently. So the public cloud security have to be high scale. And this is kind of where the Vault comes in. The concept of the Vault is not, it's not new. I mean, essentially, even if you have just a file with the passwords, text file with the passwords on it, you kind of, you already have a Vault. How efficient it is, it's very questionable, because how do you maintain security? How do you maintain accountability? How do you provide audit trail for a simple file? And how do you provide automation? And how do you provide, not just security, but actually just keeping it in sync between multiple users in your organizations? How do you make it sure that it's up to date? So Vault is a lot more elegant solution. So here I've launched a demo version of the Vault. It's pretty much configured. The authentication method configuration is pretty much what we talked about before, and I've explained. The only thing that is slightly different is I've created the users group. I've pre-created groups, so it's going to be easier to manage users. It might be a good point to take a look at the way. It might be a good point in the talk to look at the way Active Directory is set up. So I've created a dedicated OU for Vault, and you might want to consider doing it in your production environment as well, simply because you might want to delegate the management of this OU to either a dedicated group or to the Vault itself. Because what Vault can do for you, it's actually manage account in the AD. So there are many use case scenarios for this. But let's say you have a special account that you need to share. Like imagine it's the merger, it's acquisition scenario, and the acquired firm has provided your team with a single account to make changes inside their environment, and you need to share it between the members of your team, or let's say it's some kind of an outdated software that allows only a single logon, and you want to maintain accountability and the audit trail for the use of this account. So this is what I've created. This account is set up in Vault. And let me show you first how the Vault is set up as a secret engine. And then we'll do a demo of what Vault can do with the account. I'm just going to run a quick show, just so you don't need to take my word for it, how easy it is to deploy AD, how to enable it. It's pretty much the same as enabling LDAP for authentication. So just next. I will not be able to use AD path because it's already existing. So I'm just going to call it AD 2019 or any other random string, and I'm going to hit enable, and it's going to be created successfully. So unfortunately, there's no way for me to show the configuration for AD in UI. So I will need to go to the CLI. And in Vault, everything, just like in the Linux, everything is the file. In Vault, everything is the path. So if I just read the AD config path, it will show me the configuration we have for the Active Directory engine. And once again, there's not a lot to it. A couple of points that I want to highlight is, if you remember, for authentication, we just use LDAP as a provider. If you planning to use AD as a secrets engine, it's better to use the secure LDAP because the Microsoft requires secure connection to AD if you want to be able to reset passwords in AD. And you definitely want to do that, and I'll explain why in a moment. And then you need to provide, you need to provide the user to log into your AD. This user will need special rights. So ideally, this user should be able, once again, should be either the owner of the OU or have admin rights over the accounts that will manage. So let's jump into another machine and talk and do a quick demo. So this machine is not on the domain, which is, which will allow us to highlight another benefit of using Vault, because your machines don't need to be domain joined in order to obtain credentials. So what I'll try to do is I will try to update the credentials for the user, for the Vault build user we saw before, from Vault on a non-domain joined machine. So I would like to know what the current password for this user is on a non-domain joined machine. Once again, this machine is not a domain member. It's a freshly built machine that have no knowledge about what else. And yet we do receive credentials, and I can use those credentials to access domain resources. Let me demonstrate. I think I'm starting to see why people don't use Microsoft Edge. Come on, any moment now. So what I'll try to do is I will try to log into the certificate authority for the domain, which will require me to provide domain credentials. Sorry, once again, it's built for the machines, so it's not exactly that user friendly. There, we've logged on. Let me show you what the script does, and please don't judge the script too harshly. I did it primarily for illustrative purposes. So I made it easier to view and not necessarily to maintain. So what we're doing is we just making a web request to the Vault server. And we're making this to request to check out an AD account that is sitting in the library, in the Vault library. Just to highlight, for authentication, I'm using here a root token, highly not recommended for production. And then pretty much what we do, we just slice up the username and the password from the output, and then we output the result. So now what I would like to do is I would like to go both back and forth in the future. So I actually would like to use Vault programmatically. So I want my script to actually do something while requesting a password from the Vault. And what I would like to do is I would like to map a network drive on this machine using using the information we get from the Vault. Let's try that again. Okay, better. And you know what? It's a good thing that we ran into this problem. So now I will be able to access the file on the share. And by the way, so think about when you're building a machine, more often, and you need an access on, and it's not domain joined yet, and you need an access for something on the file server or resource on a domain machine. This is way better than providing username and passwords in the text of your scripts. Now, the reason why we ran into the problem is because when I request account from Vault, account information from Vault, I'm doing a checkout. So essentially the Vault will have a record that only me had access to the account at that time. And it actually ensures this by managing the Windows password for the account. So if we look at the information that I received from the PowerShell script, this is the username and the password that the PowerShell script got from Vault. The username and the password that a batch file received was different. So what the Vault did for us was rotated the password on the account. You know, you might ask and say that, hey, you know, having the Vault token is, you know, might be viewed as bad as just putting up a username and a password. But when you think about it, tokens provides an extra layer of abstraction. I use the root token just for the simplicity. In reality, there are other ways to obfuscate it even further. The account had a time to live associated with it. So I mean, essentially, it would expire and would be reset after a set period of time or on another request. So kind of the blast radius, even if somebody steals this username and password, the blast radius is going to be significantly less than if the real domain account is compromised. So now so after the demonstration, let me go back and talk what the difference is between the Vault Free, which is what we used here, and the Vault Enterprise. And hopefully by now you saw that how powerful the free options are. But more importantly is actually not how, when you, but there's more in enterprise. So before we jump into the enterprise, a couple of more features that that Vault provides that we didn't talk about. First is and it's a free version. First, there's a transit engine. And what transit engine does, it encrypts data in flight. So let's say you have an information that you need to write to the database. You can pass it to the Vault to be encrypted. And then when you write it to the database, it's going to be encrypted and it will be able to be decrypted only by the Vault itself. There's a response wrapping. So remember when I said about the obfuscation information? Once again, if you need to, it's similar to, let's say, PGP mail, where you can encrypt a message to be sent, and it's going to have a permission and it's going to have a time to live associated with it. There's also a random generator. You know, computers are not very good at random. So when there's enough feature in the free version for you to start, and probably one of the main reasons why you want to start is look back and think about what I originally showed you was a dev version. You don't need domain admin. You don't need admin accounts to install it. You don't need admin accounts to run it. You don't need domain admin rights to integrate it for access. So the entry level is low. There's a chance that somebody you don't know in your company will start using it, and then it's the shadow IT. And you know, shadow IT is okay. Shadow security is very not okay. When you're ready to scale, there's a Vault Enterprise Edition, which adds more features for you. There's a reliability, where essentially you can have a primary and secondary nodes. There are multiple ways of replicating. There is a disaster recovery replication where you have multiple replicas that are on standby. You can have a performance replication where you have a multi-master node which can be used at the same time. There are namespaces, which essentially allows you to have a single Vault infrastructure for a firm and yet slice it and dice it for the needs of your teams and your work groups. And there's auditing, which is important, and you know it's probably the main driver for going into the enterprise. While we're on the topic of reliability, you know, you can create reliability provide reliability for the free version as well, as long as you have a good data protection solution in place. So if your file share or a disk where you store the Vault and the Vault backend is backed up, you should be able to do a restore and unseal the Vault using the keys that you stored before. I'm not sure. So to kind of like underscore, think about the challenges that you will see, security challenges that you'll see when you go into the cloud. Think about, definitely take a look at the Vault and see what challenges it can solve for you. And it's better to change before you have to. That's not Steve Jobs, that's Jack Welch. He was the CEO of GE in the 90s. I hope you found this talk informative, and it steered your curiosity for the HashiCorp Vault and how it can be used to modernize Windows AD environments. Thank you for your time.